All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Matt Miller. I am the Volunteer and Outreach Coordinator at Metro North Adult Basic Education, and I'm also a co-chair at the Volunteer Engagement Committee for LAN.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kaija. I use she, her pronouns. I am an adult education instructor at Neighborhood House, and I'm the chair for membership and marketing at LAN. And thanks for joining us today. So what we're going to be talking about is we're going to start with kind of an overview of questions that you can ask yourself in your marketing and outreach process before jumping into some specific ideas that you can use for digital marketing and then for in-person or physical marketing as well. And so just to start out, what we've done is we've created this PowerPoint as a series of questions. You can access it by going to that participant folder. I think it's called the participant folder, and use these to help guide the process. We're hoping to have something that allows people to jump into their marketing and outreach plan at all different levels. So whether you're already doing stuff or you're just starting, hopefully we're able to give you some things to think about. The first thing that we want people to bear in mind is asking what your goal for recruitment is. And this maybe sounds basic, but some of the things that you want to think about are you going to be recruiting for a whole program, or are you thinking about one class? And the answer that you give for that should change how you create your marketing strategy and who you're trying to target with your outreach. So another question to ask is if there's a population of people you're hoping to reach. So as you're looking at the program, who do you already have come in your classes? And then what do you know about your community, your area, and the organization's jobs and people who are in those places that maybe aren't coming through your doors? And do you want them to be coming through your doors? So thinking through sort of who's not in your classrooms. And then the other question for your goals of recruitment is how are you going to measure this? So if you're recruiting for a specific class, you might have targets for the numbers. If you're recruiting for your program, you want to think about like what some of the benchmarks are going to be. Like how much are you trying to increase attendance, or how many people are you trying to reach? Or if you've decided part of your goal is to reach out to a certain community, how will you know that you have been successful in doing that? So you want to start asking those questions and then think about what resources that you have to put into recruitment. Depending on the program that you have, you might be able to make this a part of someone's position. It might be someone's full position, or you might be in a shoestring budget program where this is something that you're adding on to your own duties or you're trying to spread across staff. And it's important to be realistic about what you can achieve with the resources that you have. So some things to think about are the time commitment. Some of the things that we'll talk to you about for this process are going to be low time commitments. These are great if you're short on staff, if you're short on time to do things, but some of them are going to be labor intensive. And you don't want to commit to something that's going to involve a lot of time that your staff don't have. Also budget. Do you have a budget? How much money are you willing to spend on things? There are ways that you can do outreach for free, and then you can scale it up from there. So we're going to talk about the kind of spectrum of that, but you want to figure that out for yourself starting out. How much money are you willing to put into your outreach? And then how are you going to brand what you're doing? So you might have an organization that already has like a logo. You might already have a sort of style guide for what your organization does, and you can use that. You might already be using it. If you don't have something like that, just thinking about what are you going to do in your outreach to make sure that people who are maybe encountering your messages in a variety of different places know that it's your program the whole time. So thinking about consistent colors, maybe consistent language, a consistent contact, so that whether they're seeing it online, whether they're seeing it on a flyer, whether they're getting a business card, people are connecting all of those things back to you. And then take stock of what kind of technology you have and what kind of technology skills you have. And whether or not those are things you want to invest in acquiring if you don't have them yet. We're going to talk a lot about different digital platforms and then also deep dive a little bit into Facebook. And so if you already have staff who are comfortable with these things, it's good to leverage that. If you know that your staff doesn't feel comfortable with it, then taking the time to invest in maybe getting some professional development for that is important. And then our final sort of overarching question that we suggest you ask is thinking about what connections you already have. So if you have email addresses and phone numbers from previous participants, maybe people who have already done something in your program or have reached out to you, but you have not come through the door, make sure that you're kind of assessing who you've already reached and whether or not those are populations that are worth reconnecting with, either to promote a new program or just to remind people that you're around. A lot of the time, you'd be surprised how many times people get, if you reach out to them, they'll be like, oh, I was meaning to come back, but I never did. Or there's often a misconception among students that maybe they can't come back if they've left from a program. And so making sure that you are not just seeking new people and raising awareness about your program with populations that haven't heard of you, but inviting others back in. And then take stock of the potential partners or spaces that you have to advertise and to connect with. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about in-person marketing and outreach. But organizations that are doing work that might relate to services your participants use, things like libraries, and also businesses that are in your area. So really getting to know your community. So with those as sort of a guiding overview, I wanted to add that Atlas has created a template that you can use to sort of like write this out if you're a person who likes to have like a worksheet structure for all of these. We've got the link for that at the end of this PowerPoint. So if you go back into that participant folder and go to the last slide, which will also show at the end of this presentation, you can take a look at that and use that to help with some of that initial brainstorming. So from here, we're going to go into digital outreach, and we're going to do some overview, and we're also going to do some really specific tools. So when you're marketing yourself online, the first thing that I think is useful to do is evaluate your program website. And so the first part of that is first having a program website. So if you don't have one yet, there are ways to get a free program website. We started by using Weebly, which has a free option. I'll just say it's Weebly. And then you can also pay to upgrade that if you want to like have a shorter URL and get some additional things. If anyone else has a website that they are using or a free platform that they have found useful, go ahead and feel free to share those things in the chat. If you work with an organization and like you're not the one who's in charge of your website, then the next thing that we recommend doing, and even if you are in charge of your website, take stock of who the audience is for your website. And I'm going to give an example with what I mean by that. I'm going to share from the organization where I work. I mentioned I work at Neighborhood House. So this is a screenshot of our organizational website. It's from a month ago. And some of the things I want you to notice is that, in my opinion, this is not a website that is participant facing. It's advertising for our fundraiser. If you look at the things that are up at the top of the page, it's got information about ways to help, the media, the Wellstone Center, jobs, which are all great things and important for an organization to have. But if you're thinking about getting people through the doors and into your program, this website is not going to be participant friendly. So thinking about who your audience is and who you want them to be, or who you want to be able to navigate it, and then what information you're prioritizing. So to address this, we created our program website, which looks like this. And you can see has a focus that's a lot more geared towards people who are using our services. One of the things to double check when you're creating your website is that it looks good on a computer and on a phone, because the chances are strong that your potential participants are going to be accessing a lot of these on things like a cell phone. And you want it to be a website that can be navigated that way as well. And then make sure that people can contact you on this. You can, if you aren't doing online registration or you're not able to be like responding online, that could just be a phone number or some way to connect with you that you would advertise in other ways. But a big thing is making sure that people can register online. For our program, we use Google Forms, and we just embedded this into our website, and that creates a URL and a stable place that we can advertise registration across other social media platforms. So just to sort of take stock of where we're at and what people are already doing, I'm going to ask Carla to launch our first poll. We're curious to know just who already is doing online registration. So Carla, if you wouldn't mind putting that one up. Yeah. And if everyone could take a minute and just let us know, do you already do this? Okay, we'll give people maybe a couple more seconds to answer. We've got about half of the respondents so far. Oh no, 100%, or not 100%. Okay. Well, and I think we can share this out. If anyone hasn't had a chance to answer, go ahead and answer. Otherwise, we're going to share out the results of this. And here we go. So I think everyone should be able to see now. So this is great. It looks like we're about 50% yes, 50% no. For folks who have been using online registration, have you seen a lot of traffic with that? You can just reply in the chat. Have you seen people using the online registration? Is that something that maybe it's not something that everyone's involved in or manages? Okay, after a marketing push. Thanks, Becca. Oh, interesting. So Lynn's saying that they get a lot of spam through it. That hasn't been something that we've experienced, but it's good to know. If anyone's unfamiliar with Google Forms, they're okay, excellent. The Google Forms is free to use, and what will happen is that it will generate an Excel spreadsheet that you can check. And so you'll be able to sort of continuously see who's registering, and it'll also kind of create a historical document for you to have that like list of potential participants that you could maybe reconnect with later too, even if someone registers and maybe never gets to your program. That could be a database for you to draw on when you're advertising new programs. Excellent. Well, thank you all for sharing about that. And I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk a little bit now about once you've got that website and that registration, what you can do with it.
Thanks, Kaija. Great. So once you have a website and you have that in place, it's also important to really think about how you can direct people to that website. And so one of the things that we do is we use social media to do that, as well as our direct email campaign. But choosing a social media platform is an important process to go through, building off the things that Kaija said in the beginning. Do you have the technical skill to do this? Do you have the time to do this? Because managing a social media platform is a time-consuming task. We need to think about how often we post. We need to think about, do we have enough material? Do we have enough pictures? Do we have video? Do we have the right things that we can forward on? And is this going to be something where it suits your marketing needs? So we wanted to take a look at, have a poll and look at what people are using, what platforms they are using now, if they are using any. So if we could launch our second poll, that would be great. All right, we'll take a couple of seconds here to have people have a chance to respond to that. But one of the things that we were looking at is not only was something that we could manage or how well we could manage our social media platform, but what did we decide we couldn't do was a big determinant in what we chose eventually came to at Metro North. What just didn't seem like it was in our capability to do, something we didn't want to take on. We didn't have staff that could dedicate to that. Right, so we're about 75% participation. So I might end the poll now, if that's all right, or should I wait a little bit longer?
I'll give people another. I'll just say quickly too, some of you might be using multiple platforms, so pick whichever one you like the best if if that's the case, or feel free to chat if there's other things that you're using.
Great point, Kaija. Thank you. All right. So we're going to share the results there. We see that almost half of us are using Facebook. We have one Twitter user, and we have another half that are using a website. Some that are not using any at all. That is great. If you want to look at our next slide, please. All right. So nationally, when we looked at how social media platforms are used overall, we can see that 81% of Americans said they have used YouTube. 69% say they've used Facebook. We can go through the list of others here at Instagram and Pinterest. This is a great data survey to help us kind of address what is our demographic and think about our demographic in terms of what social media platform we could use. It's interesting if you look at the 18 to 29-year-old, they have a high percentage that use Snapchat, higher than others. But we were most interested in those who have a high school degree or less, and we found that 64% of Americans 64% of Americans who do not have a high school degree use Facebook. You could see that there are also 70% that use YouTube, but we made the conscious choice not to use YouTube as our social media because we don't have enough videos. We don't produce that. We didn't have a way to make that happen. And so it would really limit how we could post and what we could do. It was much easier for us to take a photo and to make a quote or to reuse a photo from another source. And that helped us make that decision. In addition to understanding what was our technical abilities, we also did a market study of our students. And we found that 2/3 of our current learners were using Facebook. Many of them used multiple social media platforms, but at least they had Facebook that they would look at. So we felt that was a good source for us. It also had that capability of having a post. We could put events with that. So if we had a registration or if we had a particular event that we wanted to promote, we could use that platform to do so. It did have some live streaming capabilities if we wanted to use that. We haven't used that yet, but we could post videos there as well. So it really helped us narrow down what platform we wanted to use. In addition, it provides a translation service. Now, those online translation services are never great, but it does allow a student who, if they've set their language, they will receive posts that have been translated or be able to easily translate. So we thought that that was the best platform for us to use. So now that we knew what platform we were going to use, we had to do a little bit of understanding of how to use it well and understand a little bit more about how Facebook works. So for this presentation, we want to kind of share some of what we learned and look at some of those aspects. So we wanted to kind of look over what is the difference between a profile and a page. What's the difference between boosting a post or a boost and an ad. We wanted to learn a bit more about how we can define our audience when we're using advertising. We wanted to learn about how to schedule a post as well. I'm going to talk about those things in a little bit more detail coming up, and then Kai is going to come back and talk a little bit more about Remind and Google Voice.
Yeah, so I'll say just very briefly for Remind and Google Voice, these are two ways for you to connect with people after you've got phone numbers. Remind is something that you've maybe heard about, especially if you're working with school districts. I know it's gotten really popular. It's a great way to be able to create, it's a website, but you can also use it on your phone as an app. And if you have a student number and you get a student signed up on Remind, then you can put them in a class. And it's a way that you can send mass text messages as well as individual messages to students, and is a good way to keep in touch with them. The caveat to Remind is that it's a little bit tricky to get signed up for. So it's not a great platform to use if you're just connecting with someone online and you don't have the chance to see them in person to get them signed up for information. For something like that, I would recommend using Google Voice. Remind and Google Voice are both free. Google Voice is something you can open as a website. You can also use it as an app on your phone, and it allows you to text and call people using a number generated by Google. So if you don't want to be using your personal phone for that kind of interaction, or if you want to have sort of a shared Google Voice number that works for your program, you could also have multiple staff who are then able to sign in and access this, as long as it's on a Google account that everyone can sign into. And this is a nice way to follow up. If you have somebody who registers for your class, you could send them a text message, you could call them, and you could also distribute who's responsible for this, so that if everyone's able to sign in to this Google Voice, they'll be able to see this history of a text message conversation that has been had with a student, and maybe continue connecting with them. So those are just two things that we wanted to add quickly before jumping into how you reach all these people online. So I'll give it back to you, Matt.
All right, thanks, Kaija. Good. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the difference between a profile and a page. So if you think about a profile as just you, is one person, but a page is your organization or a group of people. In order to advertise or to boost, you need to have a page that is set up with a account somehow or another to pay for ads. So the page function is something that your sites can do. It's a free thing to do. You can choose to set up a page for your organization without any cost attached to it. But it's something you need to do to kind of get access to that boosting and advertisement that Facebook has. So there are three ways to think about sharing information on Facebook. First is a post, which is the most common. It is something that you can share as an individual. It's what your friends share. The number of people photographing what they ate today and sent to you, those are all posts. Those are things that we share. But a post is limited in who sees it. It's only people who are your friends or who follow you. So it doesn't share with people outside of that group that already knows you. Now, if you have a really large group of friends and you want to make sure that that something you just posted is seen quickly by people, you can boost that post. So that will show up on their feed, their Facebook page, kind of at the top when they first log in, so that they will see that quicker. So that's a way to, if you have something you really want to share to a group, but they have to already know you and be connected with you, that would be a good thing. So sometimes you might want to boost if you have a reminder for graduation or a reminder for an event. There might be some reason for you to post a boost or boost your post. The third way to communicate through Facebook is an advertisement. And this is the only way to reach people outside of your friends. So this can go to the Facebook community at large. When you're creating that ad, we want to think about some things that are really important and how to best use the technology to reach the audience that you've identified for your marketing. If you want to go ahead and click on the next one, Kaija. Right. So in a page, when you have that set up, you'll see on the left side there'll be an ad center icon. And if you click on that ad center icon, it'll allow you to see all of your ads. It'll allow you to see the audiences that you've created. And it'll allow you to see your credits or how you are going to pay for your advertisement. I want to spend a little more time talking about audiences because I think it's a really important thing to help make Facebook more effective for you. So you can create specific audiences, and that audience can have a name. And so you can choose to have an audience that is specific for your ESL population versus your GED population, or maybe you're looking at promoting a new class like a commercial driver's license. You can label that a commercial driver's license audience. And so you can name them and group them and then reuse them other times if they've been really successful. In an audience, you can choose the gender that will receive that audience, that advertisement. You can choose the age range as well. So you can narrow down by age. And most importantly for us, you can choose your location. If you did not provide any of these three criteria, Facebook would send this ad to 252,600,000 people. Now, there might be some programs out there that can handle that many students. We know we can't, and it's more important to narrow that audience down to make sure that your ad is seeing somebody who might really need that service or need that class. So we want to be able to make sure that we're looking at our geographic area. That helps us narrow it down. Once you would type in like your city or your county or your state, you can choose how far the radius would be, and then it'll actually show you on a map what your location is. You can actually drop a pin on that map if you wanted to kind of specifically say, oh, it's this location generally. I wanted to be able to get something that's more like here. And so you can use by typing in the name of a location or an address, or you can just drop a pin on a map. But those things are really helpful in narrowing down your audience. Next, I want to look at some other criteria that can help you narrow down who will see your ad. So Facebook allows you to select the behaviors of the viewers on Facebook, their interests, and their demographics. The most common demographic I use is education. So we include people who have a certain degree, or we can also eliminate people who have a degree or are currently in high school. So we often will eliminate people who are currently in high school because we don't want to share our ad with them. And so we call that that's called an excluding. So you can include or exclude anyone based on these criteria. We have a TEAS, which is a nursing prep test class. And so we specifically target people who are interested in, so I look at their business and industry and their interests, they're interested in healthcare. So that allows me to kind of narrow that audience down. And you can play with this a lot and run ads and then see which one of your audiences is more effective, which one gets more results. So this is a great tool for us to use as we are thinking about our ads. Okay, we'll look at the next slide. So once you've identified your audience, and that's going to help you narrow that down and make sure that your money will go further, you can also schedule and set the budget for your advertisement. So if you set a budget of a lifetime budget, so that means for the whole time you're going to run your campaign, and I have in here just November 2nd to November 30th, that's the time frame of my advertisement, I'm willing to spend $350. So Facebook will allocate when it sends your ad. It charges you each time that someone sees or responds to your ad. So you only get charged for when it's successful. But it doesn't mean that that's going to be 100% that student is going to come to your class. That just means that they responded to your ad. Maybe they looked at it, maybe they liked it, maybe they sent it to a friend. But it's a way to make sure that you know that they've been successful if you're able to get that interaction. So if you've got a lot of interaction, that means that your audience is really right. That means that what you are sending them is really resonating with those people. So that's a good sign. So you can set the days. You can also choose what times to run your ads. So you can add, by clicking this run ads on a schedule, you can see that grid in the bottom. And so you can actually choose the hours and which days to have your ad run. So maybe you are really looking at promoting a Saturday class, and you want to make sure that you have people who are really available on Saturday, and you want your money to go as far as possible. So you only send it on Saturdays when you think that those people are free to do that. Or maybe you're looking for an evening class, so you want to look just at evening times. There's lots of ways to think about how you are going to run the schedule or create the schedule for your ad to extend how your targeted audience and when they will see it. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one there. Right, so that kind of wraps up what we know about Facebook and what we're thinking about that. There are some other options too that are kind of similar that use that same concept of designing an audience and thinking about your scheduling. There's a mail service called Every Door Direct Mail, which also allows you to actually choose a mail route. It's a really cool map. You can actually pick a route to go. It is 20 cents per mailing. But you have to make your own postcard to go with that. So it's a little bit more expensive of an option. You can choose your location very specifically, and some routes will allow you to choose the income of the recipient, and I think their education level too. I'm not sure about that, but it's something that can be a little more targeted, just like you can do with Facebook, but you can still do with a regular postcard. The link to that service is in our resources page, which is at the end of this presentation. Okay. Now I'll talk a little bit more about other alternatives for how you can reach your audience through multiple ways and not just electronic. Kaija is going to walk us through a couple of alternatives.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so now that we've thought about what you can do online, there are a whole bunch of people who it might be more effective for you to be reaching in person or through some kind of physical contact. So we're going to start with some passive investments in marketing. These are things that can be good to do if you don't have a lot of time, but you want to get the word out and make sure that you're being seen. So the first one is flyering. Again, this goes back to making sure that your flyers look consistent and that this is something that students or potential students are going to be able to connect back to your program. Avoid putting too much information on your flyers. A lot of the time, people aren't going to read something if you've got too much text. So keeping it simple, the name of your program, the name of your class, making sure that the requirements are really easy to find and the contact information. And then you want to get those into local businesses, organizations around your area, get them to your schools, put them up at your libraries. And then things like signage. So this could be sandwich boards, outdoor signs, billboards if you have the money for it. At Neighborhood House, we use a sandwich board, and it's one of our most effective outreach tools. The number of students we have who tell us the reason they came is because they walked past the sandwich board and saw free class is astounding. So just having something that's sitting out there for people to see. And then another idea is you could get business cards for your students or something like that. Small ways that your students are able to be a part of this process. A lot of the times we know we get people through referrals. So anyone who's currently a participant with you is also potentially someone who could connect another person who wants your program, and giving them the tools to be effective at doing that, making sure they know who can be contacted, so that if they've got a friend or a relative or someone they talk to who's interested, they can come and connect them to you. If you're able to do a little bit more active outreach in person, then first, again, a reminder to take stock of your community. Think about the places that potential participants are going. We have a laundromat that's very popular close to us. A lot of people are just sitting at the laundromat waiting for their clothes to be done. You can put up flyers. You can also go and table or talk to people in spaces like that. And then think about how you build a working relationship with those places. This is going to be a bigger time commitment. So you'll want somebody who's able to do this and to be a consistent contact. But if you can meet with other organizations, if instead of just hanging up a flyer, you can go and talk to librarians, or if you're able to build connections with your local principals, get in with like parent-teacher conferences or other school events that you're able to be present at, or at least the people who are present at those places know about your program so that they can tell the people they work with. It'll be more effective in a library for a librarian to make a referral verbally with a student than it is for them just to have the flyer. So if you can't do that, put up the flyer, because that's good too. But if you're able to do some of those more in-person things, it'll help. Find opportunities to table. If there are food distributions in your community, community events, parent-teacher conferences, like I mentioned before, these are all spaces where if you can have a staff member sit down, have those flyers, talk with people who might be interested, that's a great way to connect. And then again, build your existing connections, those numbers of former participants. So you can mass text and do recorded calls. You can mass text through Remind if you as a program invest in getting everyone signed up on it. You can also pay for something called robocall. It's like 8 cents a text or 10 cents to send out a recorded message, which is a way to let people know like, hey, we're starting a new class. And so if you have money to connect that way. And then, yeah, talk to your participants and let them know when you have new programs so that they can connect with people. Even if they're not attending, they might know someone. So other considerations, I'm going to pass back to Matt. And we've got about 7 minutes, I think. So we'll go quickly.
I see that. Do we want to launch our chat right now?
Yeah,
And we'll do that.
So let's see, I'll just take us down to, for the sake of time, this discussion. So we're going to ask you to give feedback. And then in addition to that, we have a Padlet, and I'm going to put the link in the chat for everyone right now. The Padlet specifically is a question that we'd like to ask you as members of LAN. One of the things that the Literacy Action Network does is provide support to other programs and do outreach. So we're curious to know what LAN can do to help support you in these efforts and what you'd like to see. And so if you want to use the Padlet to give us feedback there, and then Matt, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, that sounds perfect. Thanks. So if you, I'll continue to talk over if you want to type in some of those things that you're thinking. One of the things that we are working with at Metro North is really thinking about not just recruitment, but retention. We have a phrase that we're really pushing, that everything is marketing. And so that includes how you walk into the building, how students walk into the building, how their first impressions and how important that is. So one of the things that we're doing is really thinking about how students are just first interacting with us and how important that is, making sure that our testing and intake staff understand that they have a marketing function as well as a accuracy and data collection function. That's really important for us. Something else we've been looking at trying to do is leapfrogging on bigger events. So if COAB is doing a national campaign, I don't think it's forward with adult ed as part of their campaign. And so we're looking at how we can leapfrog on to that attention, and really kind of understanding the schedules of things. Like a couple of weeks will be a National Apprenticeship Week. So we're really kind of promoting our career pathway programs right now, because we were trying to leapfrog on some of that national and statewide marketing as well. And I think one of the things that we're also thinking about doing is just making sure that we know if our campaigns are effective or not. How do you know if they're actually reaching the audience you want, especially with a digital campaign? It's often very hard to know. There's a service called Bitly that allows you to kind of make a shorter URL, but then it also records who clicks on that. So you could have several of these short URLs, one for each one of your campaigns, to see who's actually gone to your intake or your registration form. So you could take that Google form that Kaija talked about in the beginning and make a Bitly, and you could see which ads did people actually respond to that. And that's a good way to kind of know if your marketing has been effective. Right. Is there anything on our Padlet that we can share out, or if other people want to share in the chat, we're welcome to hear that.
Yeah. And since I'm screen sharing, I'm not able to see if there's any action on the Padlet. If anyone's unfamiliar with Padlet, I can just let you know, at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see like a little, I think it's a plus sign that you click, and it allows you to write messages. And so we'll keep the Padlet open. It's here and it'll be live for the next few days. So as you're thinking about marketing and outreach, thinking about maybe what your program needs are, and if there are things that are kind of beyond the capacity of your program, or you think might need a bigger scope than just what your program is, feel free to share those ideas. Even if you have questions about like what LAN's already doing, or what the capacity LAN has, you can put questions in there as well. But we'd love to
have it up so I can read a couple of things. There are some great suggestions here. Is that LAN could kind of create a list of those tabling events and how to be a part of that, or how to sign up for that. There's also a suggestion about kind of making a calendar of those national events. So like the National Apprenticeship Week, just kind of helping people know that these are scheduling things that could line up, and also making templates. So we could actually make that template. I know it's something that COAB has done quite a bit, where they've kind of created a template for us to put in our own specific information, but those would be really helpful to do. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, those are wonderful. Angie has a question in the chat about email marketing, and if we have email sign up on our website. For our registration, we do have a spot for people to put their email address, but it's not a requirement for people to fill out the application. Our program has not had a lot of success connecting with participants through email. Once I am in contact with somebody and I can communicate with them that I'm going to send them an email, I feel like that sometimes follows through. But for our student base, I found text messaging to be a lot more direct and effective. But I don't know, Matt, if you've had a similar experience. Or
we actually use email more. I guess I would say that we've used it in the past and it's been pretty successful. I think what we have done, instead of having people link directly to our application, which can be kind of more intimidating, we've asked just for name and email, and people are more often willing to put that in. So for more information, and then started a email conversation with them. That also gives us a list of people. So if we had a campaign about commercial driver's license, and these are people who gave us an email, even if they didn't sign up or whatever, often if my next class, I'll email that group specifically. So I'll kind of keep them in groups. We use a service called Constant Contact, which allows you to do emails, and allows people to unsubscribe, and it helps not go into the junk folder, because they've been kind of filtered in some way. And that's been, I think, more successful for us, because then once we have an email, we can run a free campaign. So that costs us less. So I think it's adding to our email list is something that we see as a value from investing in Facebook or other means. So tabling, collecting emails on Facebook, collecting emails, that's something we try to do.
And we'll have to wrap up fast, but Laura's got a question. She asks, for Constant Contact, do you feel like that's better than Google? Can you also use phone numbers for it? And I don't know Constant Contact, Matt, so are you able to use it for emailing too, or for texting?
So I don't think it has a text feature there, at least at the pay level we're at. I think that, I believe it's MailChimp, or there was some others that we are looking at maybe doing that. So that is one of the things, if you look at email service providers, there's Constant Contact, MailChimp, and a couple other ones that I was looking at but didn't explore much, but they often do have that same text service. So it might be a good way to manage those together. We've been, our district uses Constant Contact, so we stuck with that.
Thanks. Well, thank you all so much for joining us and for your questions and participation. If you want to follow up on anything, our contact information is here. And yeah, like I said, if you think of other things that you'd like to see from LAN, please feel free to use the Padlet this afternoon, tomorrow, over the weekend, and let us know.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Okay, I think I will end the training. I'm going to